It's election season, and here in the primary, we're going to the polls to vote for the representative you want to run in a general election. But what are the issues? How high are the stakes? And am I registered to vote? It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille, and you're joining us for this year's 2024 election preview with none other than President of the NAACP of Portsmouth, Mr. James Boyd. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. As always, we'd like to thank you for joining us every Sunday, as you always do, as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB, Hot 81, the soul of VA. Look, we hope that you are enjoying your summertime and getting geared up for Father's Day, which is next week. So hopefully all is well. And for all those who are graduating from high school, all the celebrations that are taking place, congratulations to you on a job well done. Now, the only thing left, we hope that you become a Spartan in the fall. So those of you that have been listening to us know that during the summertime, especially June, we like to go into what we call our election preview series. Election preview gives us an opportunity to really take a look at what the elections are, who's running, and what are the stakes. But also, it gives us an opportunity to really talk about the importance of voting. You know, many people have died for the right to vote. They gave not just their time, their lives, blood, sweat, and tears, but they've also paved the way for us because they understood the importance of the vote. Listen, in the United States of America, in our democracy, one man, one vote is the most powerful nonviolent weapon that we have in our country because it gives you the representative to fight for you and the policies that change your lives. So this entire month, we're having individuals who are engaged in the fight to vote. They talk about the importance of it, but also engage in organizing and community issues. So we're bringing you the political community to you. And today we have with us none other than my guy, my good friend, who I know for years, who I call my day one as relates to organizing and voting. That's none other than Mr. James Boyd, President of EACP of the City of Portsmouth. Brother Boyd, how you feel this morning?
I'm feeling good, Eric. Thank you so much for having me, sir. I want to say greetings to you and all your viewers. It's certainly a great opportunity to be on, as always, sir, as always.
Absolutely. You know, I remember probably it's actually been over a decade since, since you and I have met each other, engaged each other, and it was around organizing and voting. And, that fight is still relevant to this day.
That's exactly right.
It's amazing how, you and I, we talked before the show, it's absolutely amazing how still today, after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, we're still fighting for the right to vote. And not just the right to vote, but fighting around the edges where where legislators, more specifically Republican legislators, try to carve out and redistrict and pack and dilute districts, or even some of the more conservative courts try to remove individuals or what we call minorities from certain districts in order to weaken those districts. And then, of course, voter intimidation, misinformation, which is something that is new in this phenomenon. James, when you think about when we started out, in this fight for the right to vote, importance of voting, organizing, and so forth, and fast forward today, 10, 15 years later, I mean, what's your thoughts? Are you scratching your head? Or are you saying, here we go again?
It's always been the tactic of the in certain spaces, not only in certain spaces, but in most spaces across this country where, there are tactics, age-old tactics that are used to try to keep our people from participating in the democratic process. And one of the biggest things, of course, that we have as citizens is our vote, right? The opportunity for us to engage in our political process. And if you think about it, across different backgrounds and demographics, socioeconomic backgrounds and social and educational backgrounds, the one thing that is supposed to make us all even as citizens, is the right to vote. That's a basic American tenet, American right that every American should have. And we see, as you said today, as we saw 10 years ago, those same tactics are still in place. Whether it's making it harder to vote, you have certain requirements that are being put on voting in certain socioeconomic areas that we know mainly service Black and brown communities, right? We see it across the country and certainly here in Virginia, where you would think in 2024 it would have been easier to vote than what it was in 2015. But in a lot of cases, it's becoming even more difficult because they're using tactics, like you said, whether that be through the bench, through the courts, whether it be through legislation, or whether it just be blatant. Sometimes it's not even hidden. It's just right there in your face that certain things are put in place to keep certain demographics of people from voting. So you're right. It's not just a head scratcher, but it's a realization that in this country we still have a long way to go.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it's still evasive, but, of course, after the laws pass, things are very subtle, right? There are things that happen in the halls of the legislature and the halls of Congress and behind the scenes and through committees. And, of course, on this show, we talk about how things happen in policy, the creation of policy, which is the most important part, because at the end of the day, yes, we can voice our opinion, we can march, we can hold press conferences, but once the policy is made, that's where the rubber meets the road. But you mentioned, James, it's sometimes just in your face. And I don't know about you, but since President Trump's administration, before it started, it's become, I would even go back and say President Obama, of course, the birther movement and things of that nature. Things have become more aggressive. We had Charlottesville here in Virginia. We also had, the incident trying to overthrow the government, J6, right? So, so we've got all of these things that are in your face. What's the importance of course, people ask this all the time, but how do you feel the NAACP, which you're president of, plays a role in making sure that the public is protected, both from misinformation, but also kind of stands in the gap, protecting the people against the aggression that we see in your face?
Oh, yeah, for sure. With the NAACP, we always, even before Election Day and on Election Day, have teams locally in each of our branches, but also nationally. We have teams that are ready to take in incidents where people have been denied their right to vote, and we take a look at those things. And there's certainly been instances in Portsmouth and all around Hampton Roads, and certainly across the country that we've looked into, where people were denied their right to vote based upon certain things that they should not have been denied their right to vote. So the NAACP plays an integral role, especially when it comes to our communities, Black and brown communities, where, because of these tactics, like you said, that through policy, through legislation, but also through just the in-your-face type of things, where, our people have been denied the right to vote, and the NAACP stands in that gap, right? And we don't charge anybody for that. We don't make it a requirement that you're a member of the NAACP for us to address your issues, although we want you to be a member of the NAACP. But we think it's important for us to give voice to this issue in our country. So on Election Day and even before that, we have teams that are there, and you can reach out to your local branches if you have problems with voting, or if you're denied the right to vote and you feel like you should not have been denied that right. Definitely can reach out, and we're going to make sure that we advocate for you, because especially, and you know this, Eric, better than anybody, this election is so pivotal to the direction of this country and where we're going to go. Like in John Lewis's words, whether we're going to refuse to go back and chart our way forward, we have to make sure our voices are heard in this election.
Absolutely. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. You're joining us for our 2024 election preview. The entire month of June, we're bringing community engagers, those that are on the ground fighting for the right to vote, and also engaging our elected officials to ensure that the platforms that they ran on are actually being implemented in the community to help you. Joining us, we have with us my good friend, my guy, president of the NAACP of the great city of Portsmouth, Mr. James Boyd. Brother Boyd, you said that this election is extremely important as it relates to the direction of our country. Look, I know you listen to the show religiously, and you and I, we share, a similar passion in our thoughts of how change should come. And,
right.
Whether it be domestically or whether it be internationally, there are a lot of uncertainties that are in the world. But when we talk about those uncertainties, especially in our country, it kind of baffles me a little bit, but that a lot of people really aren't excited about this election. Do you find that to be strange? And I want to talk about a few points about the current and former president, but just in general, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, do you think that's strange?
I think it's. I don't know if I would use the word strange. I certainly would say that we've been in this spot before, and when we were at this spot, look what it yielded us. I mean, we had the same type of feel when it came to 2016, and look where it yielded. I think what we have to understand is our political power and the political capital that we have. And the truth of the matter is now, our community is in a point to where we can literally steer the direction of this country. And I don't think the answer for us is to stay on the sideline, and I understand, let me say this too, Eric, we talk about this for sure. I understand where people's feelings are in terms of, hey, we might not have, we don't have, options or stuff like that. I mean, I get it. But the truth of the matter is that we have to be in the game. And when we are not in the game, it hasn't yielded us more progress. Matter of fact, it's taken us backwards. So I feel, I don't know if the word is strange, but I do feel like we're in a place that we've been before. And when we've been in this spot and we haven't gone out the way that we can, it's only yielded negative impact on us, not positive.
So let's kind of delve down into a couple of issues. Let's look at the two candidates, and let's look at the perspectives that they have that are out there. Let's take a look at our current president, President Joe Biden. He's led us out of the pandemic. Keep in mind, we were supposed to go into a deep recession, no recession. Employment, you literally have to be blind not to see a job. Jobs are plentiful. Wages are high. Of course, inflation is fluctuating. Also, we got us out of Afghanistan. Of course, we have conflict in the Middle East. And then, of course, other things that are taking place in Ukraine. Of course, these things kind of started, one within his administration, the other not in his administration. He's appointed the first African-American woman to the U.S. Supreme Court for confirmation, who was confirmed. And I saw a stat the other day where it listed the presidents and the people that they've appointed for the judicial or federal court, and as it relates to black women. And Joe Biden has basically sent or appointed more black women to be appointed to the federal bench than any other president all the way back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. But the criticism is he's too old, or he looks too old. He's slowing down. Of course, what he's supposed to do at 80, 81, to me, right. To me, he's looking good. So, first of all, your take on that criticism, but what has transpired, and then how do the Democrats, you believe, combat that?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think, and I know that Charlamagne the God has talked about this too, which is a good point that I do agree with him on this point that, there's certainly been some advances from this administration for sure, right? And I think what I hear in the community is not really that he hasn't done it. I think it's a messaging problem, right? I think the problem is that the administration hasn't done a good enough job with relating to our community, the black community, especially like what these things mean in terms of our everyday lives. The reality of it is what we don't focus on as much as what we should is exactly what you outlined. The federal bench is super important. Judges on the federal level is really what is going to really speak to not only current but future generations. The decisions that they make is going to have an impact on our people and our community for years to come. That's not only a present thing, that's a future thing, right? And so it's super important that we have people that look like us on the federal bench. That's certainly a compliment. Ketanji Brown Jackson, all of us are proud to see that she's on the bench in the Supreme Court. Those things are super important. I do think, though, I think it's a messaging problem, but I also think that there are certain issues that the administration can speak to directly that I think is very important to our community, right? Things about, I know the Biden administration was doing work in terms of college loan forgiveness. They've been trying to work on that, but they were blocked by that, right? They were doing work in terms of things that we relate to in our communities that hinder us, whether that be economic issues, educational issues, right? I think that they have to do a more targeted job with speaking to those issues that directly impact us and things that they have done that is going to help us to advance in the future. But in terms of its age, I do think that, the party needs to definitely make, let me say this, there's plenty of options out there within the party that people can start to come up a new generation of leaders. So I hear that perspective. I think that's super important that those leaders are starting to come forward. People like Wes Moore in Maryland, who's doing the governor of Maryland, that's doing a good job. There's certain people coming up now in Virginia, people like Don Scott, Don Scott that's doing an amazing job in the House of Delegates. People, there's ranks there. But I do think right now that we his age and he's slowing down. I can't speak to his own personal situation, but I can say, it doesn't look like he's slowing down in terms of things that might help us legislative-wise, progress-wise from his seat as president of the United States. So, and then the other issue, and I know a lot of people are critical of this, but what is the alternative right now, right? This is the selections that we have right now, and I know people hate being in the best or the worst type of situation, but the reality of it is I'd rather have a situation where we're trying to deal with Joe Biden than we're dealing with the alternative, which is Donald Trump, who may or may not do anything or won't do anything or speak to our issues, right? And will only perpetuate racism, bigotry, and hate in this country, right? So, I do hear the criticism, and I hear it, and it's fair to say that, and I think it needs to be addressed, but certainly it's not going to make me go to the alternative.
So let's look at the alternative. Of course, this is democracy. You can vote who you want to. There are those that say we have a better chance with the former President Donald Trump being elected again. But we know during his time period, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty. A lot of misinformation about COVID and why you should wear a mask. And we know that school board meetings, which was probably one of the most least attended public meetings and least contentious, became the flashpoint, for all of this misinformation. And a lot, again, in your face, abrupt, and sometimes violent exchanges between individuals because of teaching history, right? Teaching teaching the history of America, which is, of course, slavery is part of that and all of that. So what do you say to those that say, hey, the alternative is better than what we currently have?
Yeah, I don't think, this, we talked about this too. I don't think that racism and disparities only exist within one party. I think that there is disparity and racism in America, and we have to be in conversation with whomever is in power at that particular time. I think that's super important. But I would say to those that say, well, the alternative, we may get something out of it. Well, we have some proof. Let's go back to 2016 and let's evaluate where were we or where are we in terms of, a Trump presidency, right? And he's already said what he's going to do. And I don't hear a lot of that voice for the black community or on black issues, right? He has certain little punchlines that he says that he has been told may get, certain play in the black community. But when the rubber hits the road, we know what he's going to do, right? And that's not something that is just James Boyd saying. Now, we're looking at historical fact from 4 years of him being president. And if we go back to that time, right, there was opportunity for him to put someone that looks like us on the Supreme Court. Did we see it? No. There was an opportunity for him to pass certain legislation that deals directly with issues in the black community. No. Now, I'll say on the flip side, there were conversations that were had, like things around criminal justice reform, right, where there was things that happened under his presidency or a legislation that was happening, but was it really getting to the issues that were really impacting people in the criminal justice system, or was it just a facade? I think in this time we have to really put on our thinking caps and say, hey, look, we're not looking for perfection. If you're looking for that, you're not going to get that from Biden or Trump. But we are looking for what is the best point for us to get to leverage for our community on our issues, and where can we start to push people to more of the margins that we need them to be at. And I would tell you, when you're going to bet on majority of administration that perpetuated hate and racism, not only what we saw in Charlottesville, but what we saw across this country. I mean, look at what we were doing when we were trying to destroy the symbols of hate, Confederate monuments, and where Trump stood on those issues, And so it's not really more it's not really us trying to, pick. It's really us putting on the cap and going to the community and saying, hey, look, we are loyal to our issues, and which administration is going to push us to where we can get to address our issues the best. And, I would challenge anybody that would say that it would be the alternative that gives us the best chance.
Speaking of Confederate monuments, once again, you're at the forefront of Confederate monuments, especially here in Southampton Roads in the city of Portsmouth. And I'd just like to note, our rector and distinguished alum, Devon Henry, was one, and he's been seen in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, here locally, you name it, even overseas, how he stepped up, to remove those Confederate monuments, even wearing bulletproof vests, him and his workers every day because of their lives, over a symbol. You just mentioned just a symbol, But with that, when you talk about symbols, I think the greatest symbol that we have of democracy is still we can go to the ballot and vote without fear of having our hands chopped off or fear of being killed or anything like that. So when we talk about this election, when you talk about this being one of the most important elections, let's talk about register to vote. For those the efforts of the NAACP, talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing and what you have done in order to continue to push the message to register to vote, because every day somebody's turning 18, right?
Right, that's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. And we across the country, our national office has put out a massive voter registration campaign where we're trying to get our people in the game. And here's the thing. Yes, we do have an individual decision on who you want to vote for, but you can't even get to that if you're not in the game. And we're saying, listen, we need to register to vote, because at the end of the day, the more of us that are in the system who are able to engage and participate, the better it is for this country. The better it is for us, the better it is for this country. So we've engaged in voter registration, certainly in Portsmouth, and we're doing it in ways that are unconventional, right? And we're thinking, we're doing actually partner with the Omegas in the city of Portsmouth, where we're doing an event in September, for example, where it's going to be an all-white social engagement where you can come and have a good time, but also we're going to have voter registration there to get to communities who may not, who may have higher levels of non-registered individuals, to try to get them in the game, right? We're going to show up at stores. We're going to have tables all across different spots in the city, throughout churches that are having back to school events. Any and every place that we can get to, we're trying to get our people registered to vote, because that is literally one of the ways that they silence Black voices is through the vote, because they understand and know that some of our people are just not registered, right? And so we're working across the country from the national perspective and certainly locally, and I can speak for my sister branches as well, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Hampton, Newport News, Isle of Wight. All of us are focused on registering people to vote because of what this election means, for sure.
Absolutely. Look, you got to do an event with the Noops, my brothers, right? Mm-hmm. Cap Alpha Psi. So.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely.
So look, let's just not limit it to the Vegas, but grand, all the Divine Nines.
Oh yeah. Let me just say, that was just an example, but I mean every day. Let me say that. Thank you. Let me clarify. All Divine Nine, all fraternities and sororities, everybody, and we partner with them all. Certainly the Deltas in our city, Alpha. Every frat sorority that has come to us, we want to definitely be in voter registration, because I know that is huge for Divine Nine as well. So absolutely, not just limited to them, it's everybody for sure.
Absolutely. Fine dude to all the brothers at Cap Alpha Psi out there. So
the Cap Alpha Psi too, absolutely.
Absolutely. So So when we talk about registering to vote, that's one part of it, right? So you're registered. Now, what about the issues? What about being engaged? Now, you and I both know, we're working, we're out there supporting families, and by the time you get out to HRBT or 264 or whatever the case may be, you're ready to get to the house, right? and just chill out. But still, the issues are there. How do you suggest, talking to and giving suggestions to our listeners about getting engaged in the issues, engaging in the town halls or contacting your elected official? How do they find out that information, and how do you, get the excitement of actually wanting to find out about it?
You know what? I think the best way that our people have always engaged in processes is, when something has happened in our community and we're trying to rally to fight against what happened, and I usually find that that's when we are most excited to engage in processes. But we got to learn, this is a challenge that I have to myself and other civil rights leaders across our community, is we have to learn how do we harness that and make that a sustained movement. That was so powerful about the civil rights movement. It wasn't just a moment. It was a movement that sustained generation, and it sustained itself because the leaders of it were very knowledgeable and strategic about how do we continuously get our people engaged in issues that are happening. One of the ways that we try to do that is to be in different areas, whether that be in technology, social media, whether it be having different applications that can keep people connected and keep the issues in the forefront. That's a better thing that we have to work on, is making sure that our people are aware of the issues that are happening, right? When these meetings are happening at City Hall, whether it be committee meetings or certain commissions, they have their meetings at certain times. We need to make sure our people are aware of those things that are happening, but also things like legislation, right? We have to do a better job with making the General Assembly real in the lives of the Black community. And that's something, the challenge that we have to do, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And when those decisions are being made, and that's why it's so important to have people like Don Scott, Louise Lucas, and others that are at the state, federal level to help bring that information back to our community so that we can engage. I mean, look at what happened. This is something that impacts Portsmouth all the time. We have tolls, right? There's tolls that are on that downtown tunnel that are a huge economic problem for our community, right? But when that was happening in 2009, 2010, because we didn't really have a lot of information that we needed, or we didn't use our political capital, now we have a contract that's there for 48 years that we have to deal with. And now we're trying to be reactionary, where we have to start to be more proactive in what we're trying to get to our people so that they know how to use their vote and know how to use their voice to bring awareness in the political structures to help fight some of these things that are impoverishing our community. So I think that there's ways to either be social media, whether it be connecting to your local NAACP branch, or whether it's just in some type of civil rights advocacy group or some kind of group, period, that you're able to get access to information. That's super important.
Absolutely. Not just a moment, but a movement. That is the president of the NAACP of the great city of Portsmouth, Mr. James Boyd. This year we've had a historic election, and who knew that the power runs through of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the city of Portsmouth. And one of the great parts of that system is not only our Speaker of the House and our Senate Finance Chairwoman, but also Mr. Boyd, who has been on the ground fighting for the rights of the people in Portsmouth for over a decade and a half, and will continue to do so. Brother Boyd, I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, sir. As always, thank you. Looking forward to speaking with you soon.
Sounds good. And that's Stay the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to impact the community. Once again, thank you for joining us. Until next time, be good, be great. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.